A lot of the technologies, you noted before, 120 different companies out there. A lot of these technologies are not scalable. Simply not scalable. The highest densities of stem cells in bioreactors is about 6 to 7 million cells per milliliter. If you use that yield, then they are correct. The technology is not scalable. You're going to end up with a product that costs you hundreds of dollars per kilogram. Not all technologies in cultured meat arena are fully scalable. However, some clearly are.
Hey everyone, in this video I want to start looking at what is it going to take to scale up cultured meat production. And there's a really interesting interview with the CEO of Believer Meats. They're a company originally from Israel, and they actually broke ground on a production facility late 2022, so just last year, with the aim to produce 10,000 metric tons of cultivated meat. So really great interview. And in the last video, we looked at actually a pretty good interview from a professor, and what he was essentially saying was that current technology, we cannot use that to scale production of cultivated meat. And I tend to agree with him, although where I think we disagree is he then seems to be saying that given that we're not able to scale cultivated meat full stop, and I do think there is a path. Again, I have no idea what the path is, but I do think there is one, and so I'm trying to find out which companies might actually be able to get there. So with that, here's a really great interview. Let's get into the video.
Now more than 120 startups operating in the nascent cultivated meat industry. But what will distinguish the winners from the losers in this potentially high risk but high reward part of the food industry? I'm Elaine Watson with Food Navigator USA, and I'm here at Future Meat Technologies to find out more.
I think one of the major things about us is the fact that I founded a company with a clear vision of how to make cultured meat a commercial reality. So even though I do biology and tissue engineering, I'm at heart still a chemical engineer. And I reversed engineer the process right from the start to ask, how do we get to a $10 steak, right? How do we get to a chicken breast that costs you the same in the supermarket as it does now? And because of that, our biology, our engineering, and our food technology is different from everybody else in the game. A lot of other companies are using stem cells. These are unstable cells. They need a lot of growth factors to be happy. They're kind of like little prima donnas. And they're very expensive to grow because of that. Future Meat Technologies is growing fibroblasts.
Yes.
So these are cells that are much more stable, and they really don't need growth factors to grow robustly. So right from the beginning, our costs are lower. We developed a bioreactor technology that allows us to recycle a lot of the growth medium. So we can reduce the amount of medium, the raw materials that we use, by about 70%. Now, no other company in the world has these technologies and this ability to reduce the cost, and this is why we're really leading the race.
So fibroblasts are cells that we understand is contributing to the formation of connective tissues. How do you get from those to muscle and fat?
So we don't think about it, but connective tissue actually includes muscle, fat, and also blood, right? Not only tendons, for example, or dermis. And fibroblasts are these plastic cells that can make a little bit of everything. They grow very, very fast, but you can take them and you can make them into fat, which gives you the aroma and the flavor of meat. And you can also take them and make them into muscle, which gives you the protein content and the texture that you want. They're very, very flexible.
So some companies in this space are growing a bunch of cells, and then for the first products, making kind of hybrids, combining that cell biomass with textured vegetable protein and some other things to make sort of processed products. And there are other companies here doing more of a kind of tissue engineering approach and culturing cells around scaffolding, and there's bioprinting and all kinds of things. What will be your initial approach?
At the end of the day, I think everybody is doing the same thing. There are those that take the textured vegetable proteins,
Yeah.
call it a scaffold, add it to the bioreactor, and then have the cells stick to it and take it out. And those that take the cells out and then add the cells to the scaffold. So it's either you add the scaffold to the cells or cells to the scaffold. It's really the same thing. I think the first generation of products of everybody in the field are going to be hybrid. They're going to combine plant proteins for texture and then animal cells for the flavor and the aroma and everything we experience from meat. This is what Future Meat is doing as well. We are, even though I have a lot of background in tissue engineering, we're not focused on tissue engineering. I don't believe that tissue engineering is the way to get us where we want to be. And I don't believe in making a $25,000 steak that only Elon Musk can afford, right? I want my kids to eat our products too.
But what about the kind of the nutrition and sensory qualities? If you are growing kind of cell biomass, how meaty is that if these cells haven't kind of matured into, say, muscle fibers as we know them?
I think that what we're saying is extremely meaty. The texturing part is something that the industry figured out more than 20 years ago. Nestle was a pioneer there, and other companies as well. We can get ground meat type texture. The burgers today are great. The texture is perfect. It just doesn't smell like a burger or taste like a burger. I want to increase the amount of omega-3s in the product, right? I want to have a chicken breast that is healthier than salmon. I want to significantly reduce the amount of saturated fat in the products, right? I don't want it to be as fatty as regular meat.
So you can tailor the nutritional profile using this technology. That's one of the...
Exactly. We can tailor the nutritional profile and we can make sure that customers get a lot more than they expect.
What would you say to people that say this stuff just isn't commercially viable?
A lot of the technologies, them before, 120 different companies out there. A lot of these technologies are not scalable. Simply not scalable. The highest densities of stem cells in bioreactors is about 6 to 7 million cells per milliliter. If you use that yield, then they are correct. The technology is not scalable. You're going to end up with a product that costs you hundreds of dollars per kilogram. That said, if you do have cells that grow as single cell suspensions, and like our cells reach densities that are 130 million cells per milliliter, which is twice the estimate of David Humbert and his colleagues, then it is scalable. The devil is in the details.
Yes.
Not all technologies in the cultured meat arena are fully scalable. However, some clearly are. So if you take a look at cars, right? We had hundreds of different models of cars, 100 years ago, right? There were some cars even running on batteries, some on steam, some on gas, multiple cylinders, some with horses, some with people waving a flag in front of them. That explosion of technology, not all of them were scalable, right? We waited for Henry Ford to open his first factory.
Is there when it comes to kind of the size of bioreactors, is there a kind of sweet spot when it comes to the size for mammalian cell culture at scale?
When you start the process, if the bioreactor is small, then your factory is not going to be efficient, right? Efficiency comes with scaling up processes. The problem is that the bigger the bioreactor is, the more non-homogeneous it becomes, right? When you start talking about a 20,000 liter bioreactor, it's the size of a 3-story building. And like any scuba diver knows, if you go under the water 10 meters, you already change the pressure. You
Yes.
double the atmospheric pressure. That means oxygen solubility changes. And then you have this massive bioreactor, but the cells on the bottom and the cells on the top are living in a very different environment. And then the process becomes less efficient. So we can talk about 50,000 liter bioreactors, but those are already going to be out of the scope of what most of the industry feels comfortable with. And those that talk about, 250,000 liter bioreactors, are daydreaming probably.
Yeah, okay. So, can you tell me a bit about which products you're starting with and why? So, I believe you're starting with chicken, which is already pretty cheap. Regular chicken is pretty cheap at the moment. Why not start with, I don't know, higher value products like bluefin tuna or something?
First of all, our technology will get there.
Yeah.
We have chicken and lamb, and we're working on beef and pork, and hopefully would announce it relatively soon. But the technology is applicable to all species. It's just that what we are making is cell lines that grow forever. We make immortal cells, and those immortal cells are easier to produce in small animals than big animals. Remember, Future Meat Technologies is not doing any genetic modifications, right? We are using spontaneous evolutionary forces to create stable lines. So our products will be non-GMO.
And you don't have to keep going back to the source, they will just continue indefinitely to proliferate?
That's right. So the interesting thing is that it's easier to immortalize small animals than large animals.
Right.
So what takes 100 days in chicken takes 300 days in lamb. For beef and pork, it's closer to 700 days. If you try to immortalize whales, it will take you 1,000 days. But this is the real interesting part. Once you immortalize them, like you said, they will grow forever. So our chicken cells went through more than 1,000 population doublings. That means each cell line produced from a single chicken can produce more than 2 times 10 to the power of 800 kilograms.
Right, that's a lot of chicken. Yeah.
Well, let's give it in perspective. It's more than the mass of the planet.
So, prospective life cycle assessment suggests that cultivated meat, is going to use less land, less water, emit fewer greenhouse gases, and so on. But since nobody's really doing this at scale yet, how do we really know?
So we don't know, but we can model, right? There are a few very good technical economic assessments published already on large-scale factories. So Delft made one, and then Hamburg published another. And if you take those numbers and use real-world data from our world's first production line that you can see behind me, you can take those numbers and essentially estimate or extrapolate what is going to be the environmental impact of a large-scale facility. And when we do that, the first numbers that we get are really, really good. Not only for beef, where we see 85% reduction in carbon emissions, 98% reduction in water use, but also in chicken, where chicken is already very environmentally friendly, and still, we believe we can reduce carbon emissions by more than 40%, as well as water use by more than 90%. So right now, Future Meat Technologies is building the world's first large-scale production plant of cultured meat in the United States. We think the United States is going to be our first market, although we're looking at other territories as well. The main unknown right now is regulatory approval. It seems like the FDA process is very well in stride. There are no big challenges left. We already demonstrated safety, and we already demonstrated the plan to ensure that the health of the product and the lines. But there are questions about how much time this is going to take, right? And then after the FDA, how much time will the USDA need to decide on the label, right? So that's the unknown. The unknown is really not whether or not it's going to be approved, but the unknown is when exactly. Is that going to happen toward the end of 2023? Is that going to happen somewhere in the middle of 2024? We don't really know, because the regulatory agencies themselves don't know. The use of antibiotics in animal agriculture is essentially contributing to about 90% of the antibiotic use in the world. And that leads to antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which we're all dealing with right now. This is a huge issue, a major concern, and this is why it was a priority for us to completely remove antibiotic from our system. It makes safety evaluation a lot easier. Because if there is a contamination, you'll see it in minutes, right? You'll see the bacteria showing up, the sensors will discover it, you don't have to do a lengthy quality assurance discovery process. You see it happening, you can clear the batch and restart. This is very, very different from animal agriculture. When, if you have something contaminated, you don't know, you do, periodic testing to figure this out. Second question is about food safety as a whole, and my concern is not only pathogenic bacteria, like Salmonella, which is a huge problem. It affects about 20% of chicken in supermarkets in the United States, but also about viruses, right? We're just recovering from the COVID pandemic, and influenza is just around the corner. Both of these viruses are jumping to humans from animals. And one of the very cool things that we developed here is a rapid sequencing approach to see which viruses appear in our cells, essentially making sure that we exclude all of the animal pathogens, but all of the human pathogens as well. So we're not talking about testing like 3 or 4 or 5 viruses that traditional agriculture is testing. We have the full sequence of these cells. We can exclude everything. And that makes it very, very unique. And hopefully, when this technology takes hold and we replace a significant fraction of the industry, we can completely prevent massive outbreaks of porcine influenza, so pig flu or chicken flu, for the coming generations.
I'm Chris, this is Space Foods. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.